In today's episode, we are talking about audits, the ultimate appraisal activity. And since it's the last couple weeks of the year, I'm reminded of a tradition that I've done now for the last 5 years, and that is reading the book Managing Oneself by Peter Drucker. It's not even really a book as much as it is an essay that is in 14-point font, double spaced. I read this for the first time in one quick sitting, and it was just really a right book, right time situation where the impact that it had on me was just unbelievable. And going back to the Francis Bacon quote of some books are to be tasted, other books are to be chewed and digested.
Together, we can simplify by combinating.
Now, my hope is you actually pick up this book and read it. And so to get you to do that, I'm just going to go through a couple of the quotes. Whenever I read books, I go in and I underline and I star quotes that I really like. And some of these I will have written over it over and over again. And yeah, some of these are just fantastic. He says, of all the important pieces of self-knowledge, understanding how you learn is the easiest to acquire. When I ask people, how do you learn? Most of them know the answer. But when I ask, do you act on this knowledge? Few answer yes. And yet, acting on this knowledge is the key to performance. Or rather, not acting on this knowledge condemns one to non-performance. On values, he says, to be effective in an organization, a person's values must be compatible with the organization's values. He continues on to say, people, I realized, were what I valued, and I saw no point in being the richest man in the cemetery. I had no money and no other job prospects. Despite the continuing depression, I quit, and it was the right thing to do. Values, in other words, are and should be the ultimate test. And so in the book, he has you ask yourself questions constantly. And these are the questions that end up being the fuel for the self-improvement exercise that he outlines. So as I was going through, I just wrote the questions down as a quick reference. And I go through these from time to time, and I just will brain dump. What are my strengths? How do I learn? How do I perform? What are my values? What is my planned contribution? And so managing oneself is really a practical daily focus on strength by learning in the way that works best for you, in a way that is aligned with how you perform, in a way that's aligned to your values, in a way that you can contribute. And yeah, a couple more quotes. He talks about some people, they learn by writing. Other people, they learn by talking. I'm one of the people that learns by talking. And actually, a revisit of this book was one of the reasons that I started the podcast. Am I a reader or am I a listener? I do try and read a lot, but I have found that whenever I read and I'm listening, I struggle a lot with reading fiction. And so if I listen to it at the same time, I found it to be tremendously helpful. So last quote here, he says on feedback that it's not necessary to change. Survival is not necessary. So let's get back to audits. Every time I revisit this book, I'm struck by how closely the concepts align with the purposes of audit in our industry, particularly internal self-audits. And just Drucker's idea of understanding ourselves objectively, audits help as a tool to help organizations and individuals see themselves clearly. They help reveal what's working well and where there's areas of improvement. And while audits can be uncomfortable, as the old saying goes, the truth will set you free. I think audits have an exposure to benefit ratio, and that by honestly assessing your systems and exposing where areas of your systems might be weak or need improvement, you gain the opportunity to improve, grow, and build trust. And whether it's an internal process at an organization or your own personal development, the value of having that clear-eyed view is immeasurable. So what is an audit? An audit is a systematic, independent, and documented process for obtaining evidence and evaluating it against predetermined criteria. Think of it as an appraisal activity. Like I said before, it's not just about catching mistakes, but ensuring that the system is working as intended. And ISO 13485 and ISO 13485 defines audits as a, quote, systemic, independent, and documented process for obtaining evidence and evaluating it objectively to determine the extent to which audit criteria are fulfilled. This definition emphasizes objectivity, and audits aren't really about opinions, they're about evidence and standards. And this is something that's particularly difficult for folks that have a technical background where they may disagree with an approach that was taken or something like that. And there's this sweet spot where, let's use the validation example as an example. Let's say a non-standard approach was taken to process validation, or an approach that was misaligned with, let's say, an auditor's personal experience in the area of validation. You can't just write it up because you don't like it. It has to be in a way that does not demonstrate the evidence that the process was designed in a way that produces product that meets and satisfies the requirements that are outlined in a specification. Now, for combination products, the FDA adds a little bit more context, and with 21 CFR Part 4 requirements for the combo product CGMPs, audits help ensure compliance across drug, device, and biological product regulations, the 820, 210, 211, and the 600. And they're the glue that holds the complex system together. Just related to combination products, I did do an episode with Lori hour back on the FDA inspection guide for combination product inspection. Please do check that out. And going into some of the more audit fundamentals, there are three main levels of audit, and each serves a specific purpose. So first-party audits are internal audits. These are conducted within your organization to evaluate a process. For example, under 13485, internal audits ensure your quality management system is functioning effectively. Think of it as your in-house checkup. Second-party audits, here you're auditing an external party, like a contract manufacturer or a test lab or a supplier, to make sure that they meet your standard and regulatory requirements. For combo products, this is especially critical because there are gaps in because gaps in supplier compliance can lead to significant regulatory scrutiny. And we've seen that with some of the warning letters that have come to some of the sort of big medical device and big pharma companies that work in the combination product space. Third-party audits are audits that are like certification or regulatory audits. These are really your highest stake audits. They're conducted by independent bodies or health authorities, independent bodies like notified bodies, for example, for ISO certification, or by health authorities, regulatory agencies like FDA, MHRA, EMA, and so on. And remember that third-party audits often come with consequences like either getting a certification or a regulatory finding 483. So preparation for those is really important. One important thing to distinguish is between an audit and an inspection. They often get lumped together, and they are related, but they have different purposes. So an audit focuses on systems and processes. They're broad evaluations of whether your quality system meets standards like 13485 or 820, whereas inspections like those conducted by a health authority, FDA, or whoever, are more targeted. They're often unannounced. They're designed to ensure compliance with specific regulatory requirements, such as those in 210, 211, 820, and EMA requirements, and so on. So think of an audit as a comprehensive annual review and inspection as a spot check, but they're both essential, and they require different preparations and mindsets. So let's break it down further. Internal and external audits is also an important distinction. Internal audits are proactive. They give you a chance to catch issues before they become major problems. For example, if you're managing supplier quality, internal audits can reveal gaps in your oversight program, which would help you prepare for external scrutiny. And external audits are the ones that are high stakes. So whether it's a If you're in the CMO or supplier, if it's a customer coming through or a notified body or a regulatory agency, external audits are about proving compliance to someone else, and they're a chance to showcase your system strengths, but also to address any weakness before they become findings. A solid internal audit program really sets you up for success as far as the external audits go. In other words, internal audits being executed well is a external audit preparation activity. Some just best practices in the audit space. I already shared a couple of anecdotes, but audits aren't about being perfect. They're about improvement. I think as far as when you're being audited, it's important to make sure that the scope is defined. Whether I've been on the auditor side where you just have such a wide scope that it's impossible to get through it in the allotted time, and vice versa. As an auditee, if you have a wide scope, then you don't really know what you need to prep to make the most use of the time. The importance of transparency in audits is critical. And as I mentioned in the training, auditors are trained to make you squeal, but they're also there to help you improve. So if you don't know an answer, it's really important to just say so and let me check on that, or let me get the right person to speak to. That is obviously critical. And once an audit is complete, reviewing the findings carefully, their opportunities for growth, it's really the reaction and how you respond to them that I think really demonstrates the quality mindset or not. And we're really used to using ISO 13485 for QMS requirements. One standard that is a little bit less known for people who are not auditors is ISO 19011, which is the standard for audit management systems, and it provides great guidances and emphasizes the importance of clear communication and follow-up on the auditor side. To close, audits might seem daunting, but they're one of the best tools we have for ensuring quality and compliance. Whether you're checking the checker through internal audits or preparing for a third-party certification or a regulatory inspection, audits build trust, not just within your organization, but with the regulators, and most importantly, with patients. I can't tell you how often in an opening presentation, you visit a contract manufacturer or contract test lab or a supplier, and one of the things that they're proud of is successful inspections, successful audits. It's something that most good companies demonstrate as part of their regulatory history in an opening presentation. So the next time you are in an audit, remember, it's not about fear. It's not about you. It's a tool for growth, safety, and success. And I thank you for joining me on this episode of Let's Combinate. If you've enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe and give it 5 stars on whatever platform you're listening to. Happy New Year, everybody. And don't forget, read Managing Oneself and Audit Yourself. And with that, I'll see you next time.